Hello and welcome to the first episode of the Move series. So in this series, like I've talked about, I'm going to bring you all different aspects of fitness and things that are going to help you perform and move better in the gym. So in part one here, we're really going to talk about the hips. So what do the hips actually do? Let's start there. So the hips work to flex, extend. They do something called abduct, or come away from your body. They adduct, they come closer to your body, and then they can do those motions again in flexion. So horizontally abducting and horizontally adducting. So those are the major movements of the hip. So when we're training the hip, we want to think about, can we do all of those types of movements? There's also internal and external rotation. So can I externally rotate or can I internally rotate? So when we're thinking about what to do in the gym, specifically with mobility and stability training, we want to really make sure that we're moving our hip through all of those range of motions, and we want to make sure we understand where we're limited and where we're not limited. So those are the functions of the hip. Now, us as human beings live in a seated position. So being in a seated position, we are going to actually posteriorly tilt our pelvis, which puts our hips in a very bad position. A lot of the times this creates your glutes to be inhibited, meaning they're not turned on and they don't actually work properly. Now, for athletics, for golfers, for any kind of athlete, that is a very bad thing. We want our hips to be firing correctly in order for us to really be able to perform at the highest level. Now, if you're just an everyday person that still wants to be active and athletic, but you sit at a desk all day, then you're probably dealing with a little bit of this. Your pelvis is tilting under. Maybe you have some lower back pain. Maybe you have tight hamstrings because of all of this. So working on your hips in the gym will really provide a lot of benefit, not only to playing sports or being athletic, to just like your posture, eliminating back pain, feeling good through kind of this area of your body. Now, in terms of athletics, now we talked a little bit there about how it works. We talked about what sitting can do about it or can do to your hips. Now, in terms of athletics and performance, if your hips aren't firing properly, you are really losing efficiency through power and through strength and through movement. So not only do we want to be able to be mobile or stable through our hips, but we also really need to work on creating strength and power through all those different range of motions that I just talked about as well. So your hips are very vital to not only your success with athletics and sport, but just movement in general. And that's why this series is called the Move series. So let's get into some drills and some exercises that I like to use with my clients and with my athletes to help improve their hip function, hip mobility, hip stability, hip strength, and hip power. The first drills we're going to go through are going to be related to mobility and stability through your hips. So the first drill we're going to talk about is in a 90-90 position. And there's lots of different hip mobility or stability drills you can do from this position. Now the drill that I'm going to show you today is called heel touches. So we want to try to make sure that we stay nice and upright. It's easy to lean in this position. I want to put my hand on the front knee to keep this stabilized. Staying upright, I'm facing that direction. I'm going to bring my heel, touch this heel, and then I'm going to keep my foot elevated and my knee elevated as I come back to the starting position. So I'm up and back. Touch and back. And you can see as I'm moving my leg, it's hard for me to keep this position. So there's a lot of stability in this hip, but also in this hip to stay down as you move. So there's a handful of drills or reps. I'll go on the other side now. Again, I'm nice and tall, keeping this hip down. I'm bringing this heel to touch and then back to that starting position. Touch, back to that starting position. Still trying to stay nice and upright with my upper body. I can breathe throughout, I can talk throughout. It's not like I'm laboring. And that would be the first hip kind of mobility, stability drill that I think a lot of people would feel a lot of benefits from doing, either in your warm up or maybe as a cool down. Maybe it's just a drill you do at home while sitting on the couch. So that's the first drill. The second drill we're gonna go through is called Adductor Rockbacks. So that first drill, we were really working on rotation through your hips, internal, external rotation. Here we're gonna get into this abducted position here. We're really gonna stretch your groin. So you put your hands down and you wanna try to sit back on your feet, keeping your leg nice and straight out. You're gonna feel a big stretch here in your groin, and then you just kind of come forward and you extend your hip. So this side is flexing as I come back, and then I'm extending it as I come down. This position stays in this abducted or really lengthened position through your groin and your hamstrings, and you get a nice pull here. So I'm just gonna kind of rock at a good consistent pace back and forth. So come back, get a nice stretch. You can sit here for a second if you want it as well. I usually have my athletes do this as a prep drill for, again, like 5 or 6 reps each side, just to get their hips opened up before we try something a little more taxing or a little more difficult. Then you come on this side, same idea. You want to come forward and back. Oh, we got an emergency vehicle. So you sit back, right into that stretch, and then you come forward. Sit back, come forward. And I love this drill. Like I said with that other one, you could do this as a prep drill, you could do this as a cool down exercise, or you could just incorporate this into stuff that you do on the floor while you watch TV at night or while you hang out with your family at night. One of the best kind of tips or pro tips I can give you about mobility and stability training is to try to incorporate it as movement throughout the day. Not necessarily a full workout incorporated about this or using all these drills, but you can just sprinkle this in throughout the day and it'll have a lot of benefits. So that's drill 2. For drill number 3, we're gonna go through again some activation and some lengthening or mobility and stability type of training as well. So the first 3, I really wanted to talk about mobility and stability through the hip. The next 2 will be more kind of strength driven. So we get into something called a tabletop position. Now, here it's easy to round my back, it's easy to arch my back. I want to kind of find that neutral position. So squeeze your belly button, try to have a straight back. So your elbows are going to stay kind of extended to keep your upper body nice and stable. Your core is active. And now all we're going to do here is try to bring our heel to the sky. Now I didn't send my toe up, I sent my heel up. So squeezing your glute to extend your hip. So heel to the sky, squeeze, right back in. Squeeze, right back in. So you should really feel your glutes firing to extend your hip. If you feel your hamstring, or if your hamstring starts to cramp, you need to come back a little bit, or you really need to think, I'm pushing my heel. A lot of the times when you feel your hamstring, it's because you're pushing your toe up. So really try to feel like you're driving your heel up to extend your hip, and that's really what's creating that hip extension. A lot of people who have lower back pain, their glutes don't fire properly and their hamstrings extend their hip. So this is a great drill to really activate your glutes and have the right muscles extending your hip. As I come up every single time, I'm going through hip extension, and then I come back to that neutral position. So that would be exercise number 3 out of 5. For exercise number 4, we're again going to start to think about hip extension, similar to exercise number 3, but now I want you to actually load this pattern, and I want you to really get something called your posterior chain, or the back of your body, really fired up. Now, a lot of people are scared to do deadlifts, or they're scared to load a deadlift pattern. But deadlifts can be very beneficial if you do them right. Obviously, any exercise that you do wrong has an increased risk of injury. But if you do this exercise right, this has so many benefits to not only your hips, but to your posture, to everything in the backside of your body. So now for a stiff-legged deadlift, I want to have my feet at hip width apart. So I don't want to be too wide here. I want to be about hip width or even a little bit narrower. I'm going to keep a nice rigid upper body. So my shoulders are retracted back and down. The dumbbells are just going to be in front of my body. Now you could do this with a barbell, you could do this with a kettlebell, you could do this with any load, but you want to keep the load on your body as you're moving down or as you're coming down. Keeping that chest up, you just lower the weights slightly past your knees and then stand back up. Now some of you might be saying, I can go lower than that, and that's great. But you really need to just get past your knees to feel your glutes and hamstrings kind of light up a little bit. And then you come back up and extend your hip to come back. So we're flexing our hip, letting the load come down here. And then we stand up and extend our hip and come up to that neutral standing position. None of this, none of that big arch. So here's a few reps. So just inhale on the way down, nice neutral back, stand up, squeeze your glutes to stand up. Come right down, good posture. Exhale to stand back up. Down, up. And again, one of the best strength-driven exercises you can do to really activate your glutes and hamstrings and get your hip firing appropriately. So that's number 4. All right, for number 5, we are going to do a lunging pattern. So again, similar to that adductor rockback, we're going to get one of our legs out in that abducted position through our hips. So you can do this with dumbbells, again, kettlebell, lots of different ways to load this movement, but it's more about the movement that I'm talking about that is really, really beneficial to your hips. Now I'm going to do it with one kettlebell, but again, I could use multiple kettlebells. I could use no kettlebells. I could use just body weight if you struggle with it like that. But how this starts, we start with our feet together, and I'm going to take a wide step out to the side. So I take a wide step out, both feet stay forward. I really just sit into one side, into that hip, get the weight close to the ground while keeping my other leg straight. You see both feet stay forward. Something that we see a lot of people do wrong is they open as they try to lunge. So you really want to keep both feet forward so you can drive in to that outside part of your hip or into your glutes and the lateral line. So then we come back to the start. So what this looks like, nice and tall, down, get the weight close to the ground, stand back up. Down, nice and tall, weight close to the ground, stand right up. So from the side you can see I'm bending or flexing at my hip, but still driving back into that side and then standing back up. Maintaining a nice straight locked out leg in the trail leg. So lead leg flexes, stays nice and neutral here. Trail leg is in abduction, and again, like we're feeling a lot through our groin, just like that adductor rockback at the start. We come back to the start and we finish. And that is exercise number 5. Thank you for watching the first episode of the Move series. This episode, we really dived in on the hips and we talked about different exercises that you could use to improve your hips, as well as I kind of gave you a little background of why it's important to train your hips. If you've liked this episode, please subscribe, please like this video, and look out for more videos from this series. I plan on making around 8 to 10 episodes in this series. So if you've liked this one, make sure to look out for the next one. Thanks again for supporting CSC Performance Coaching.